my team's job. So, my job, my role in this group is going to be to talk about how to finance properties and the ins and outs of financing and what you need to do to get pre-qualified, pre-approved, buy a home, sell a home, get a new home, have rental properties. All of those things are things that, again, Chanel and Wes are brilliant at. They day in and day out, they're working on their craft, and we talk about these things on a pretty regular basis. So that's what I'll be doing.
All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is just how to get into home ownership. What are the benefits? Because I talk to a lot of people and they're like, I'm renting, I'm happy, I'm spending my $1,300 a month, I'm good where I'm at. So we want to talk about why it is important. Am I echoing?
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Definitely.
Jesus, okay, I'm feeling really
It's
loud.
okay, we gonna linger.
Right.
I'll talk to management.
I want to talk about like what are the benefits to being a homeowner. So for you guys, who in here rents? Y'all rent? Okay. Who in here owns? You own. You own. Okay. So renting, what you want to do is, let's say I'm spending $1,300 a month, right? That $1,300, there is nothing that I get at the end of the year, except I've spent 12 months worth of $1,300. Y'all all agree with that? Okay. So if you decide you want to own a home, you can find a home that you're paying $1,300 or less in, but the difference is you're gonna get something called an interest rate. And when you get this interest rate, the government actually does something for us, which is actually not, that often that they do something for us, right? So they're actually going to give us a tax exemption on the interest that we pay. So a lot of times, buyers will come to me and they'll be like, I want my interest rate to be 2.75, right? And we start a conversation from 2.75 to 3.25. And in my head, I'm like, I don't care what the interest rate is, because at the end of the day, I am going to get a tax break at the end of the year. So if there's any entrepreneurs on the line, it is a benefit for you actually to have a higher tax, to have a higher interest rate, because that is a bigger tax write-off at the end of the year. But nonetheless, when you are a homeowner, you are exemplifying a reason to get a tax exemption, okay?
And a good point on that though is a lot of renters, they believe that, for instance, if my rent is $1,300 a month, kind of for your example, it's like, oh, well, when I go buy a house, it's gotta be under $1,300. But the thing is, because of these tax exemptions, you can actually technically afford more homes. So that same like $1,300 rental payment is really like $1,500, $1,600, maybe in the mortgage world. So that means technically you could still be paying the same, but you can also qualify for more home. So when you're out looking with your real estate agent, that could be a difference easily of $20,000, $30,000 in just your purchase price. So now it just opens you up to more opportunities simply because of these tax benefits.
Correct. Good point, Wes. See how we work together. The other thing is that another thing that I hear is, I can't buy a home because I just signed my new lease, and now I'm going to be in this lease for 12 months, okay? Who here thought that that was the rule? You have to wait until your lease breaks. Nobody thought that? Okay, all right. Well, the good thing is, if you are purchasing a home, we can really get you out of a lease and into a home within 60 to 90 days. And I'm gonna explain to you what that means. So most of the time when you're getting out of a lease, they are going to charge you a break lease fee. And most of the time it is the month you are in plus an additional month of rent, right? Anybody agree? Y'all, it's only y'all here. Right? So when you no, I know. I'm saying that's why I keep asking y'all questions, because y'all are the only ones here. So what happens with that rent is that when I go purchase a house, if I close on my house, what month are we in? October. Okay. So if I close on my house November 15th, I will not pay a mortgage until January 1st. So I skipped a month when I buy a mortgage. So a lot of people get so overwhelmed thinking they can't break their lease, they gotta come up with more money. You can really just pay your rent. The next month is your break lease fee, and you don't pay your mortgage until the next month. So it can be a smooth transition. So just because you signed a lease doesn't mean that you're stuck in it. I have worked with people who literally just signed a lease, and it might have taken us 3 months to find their home, and they are breaking their lease in 3 months.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
All right.
And another point to that, when kind of thinking that time frame, I know New American and Jeffrey works with a lot of new construction too as well. So that is also a great benefit. For instance, even if you had to say, oh yeah, well, Wes, my lease doesn't end till next September. A lot of times for you to even build a home, the process, that earnest money to even start your process is minimum. And that will go towards your final cash to close. And
waiting list now too. There's sometimes like a
Right,
90-day waiting list
yeah,
to get to write a contract, to have to
Absolutely.
build a house for 6 months. It could easily be a 9-month process.
absolutely. So even for those that are like, well, hey, Wes, my lease doesn't end till next year, you can easily look into a new construction opportunity where, you know, there's huge benefits in that one. We'll probably have to do a seminar on that. But also, it'll give you that timeline. So for instance, if you didn't want to necessarily break that lease, you can actually go into contract, start building, and it's going to take you anywhere easily from 6 to 9 months to actually get into that townhome, single family, or whatever. So that's another good opportunity to still kind of start gaining equity over the next course of these next 6 to 9 months. And I mean, you can literally see the difference and just starting early.
So another benefit just from buying a home and reasons people would buy a home is equity. So let's just throw that word out there. Do you guys know what equity is? Okay, good. So equity is what is the amount of money that you have interested in the house, like what you have gained. So if I bought a house for $100,000 and now it's $120,000, I have $20,000 in equity, which means if I sold my house, I would profit the money and equity that I have. Does that make sense? Minus paying your real estate. Okay, because I can make sure we get paid, right? Okay, so that's what equity is. So just a fun story about equity. Does anybody remember what age I purchased my house at? 23, right? Anybody remember how old I am now? 31, right. So I had my house for 8 years. And I recently sold it in July to move into one of my dream homes, you know, like on this level of my life dream home with my husband, right? And I sold that, I bought that house for $205,000, right? And I sold it for $426,750. In 8 years, that equity has more than double, right? So if I was renting, and my mortgage was only $1,227 at the time. So if I was renting and paying that $1,227 for 8 years, I wouldn't have got a tax benefit. I wouldn't have been able to, you know, save money and spend my money and know I'm still making money. And then thirdly, I wouldn't have been able to get equity in the home. So I learned after renting I literally only lived in an apartment for 10 months in my entire life, because the 10 months that I was there, I was like, I just keep throwing these people money. And I didn't understand why. So now, you know, 8 years later, I look at that and I'm like, the best way to build wealth as an individual, period, is to own real estate. Okay.
Is there a conversation to have with regards to, and or with your expectation? Let's say you're 23 years old and
yes,
you
good.
want
I
to
know
go
where you're
and
going.
go, hey, you know where I'm going.
Right. Okay. So what Jeff is trying to say, when you're looking for your first home, right? Because we're going to talk about buying 2 homes in a year, in 2 years, and there's a reason for that.
You gotta start somewhere.
Right. When you are looking for your first home, I did not go in there and say, I want all the bells and whistles. Give me everything that a house can offer, right? Because when you are looking for a home, your first home. You need it to be nice. You need it to be something that you feel comfortable in. But the end result is that you're only gonna hold that home for 5 to 8 years. You're not gonna stay there. And some people don't even hold it that long. And when you're there, you'll do things like I did in my old house. Monica, you saw my house before it was renovated. I put money into renovations while I lived there. I upgraded it because I knew the end result was to sell. So as you're looking at a first home, don't think that you have to find the perfect home. You need to find a home, because at the end result, you're gonna do one of two things, which we're gonna talk about later, is you're gonna gain equity in that home, or you're gonna keep that home that's in a prime location and you're gonna lease it out. Or you're gonna turn it into an Airbnb. You're gonna do something with it. So don't think that that home, just because you buy it, has to be your end all be all. It is just the first step to a long road of wealth. Okay?
And one thing that I like, about real estate, I kind of like just keep it at like very simplistic, like stocks, right? You can get into stocks as long as you're getting there early, you're going to make the return on the back end. So kind of treat that just like real estate. Right now, we're in a time where real estate is still growing. So as long as you're just getting in, you're finding something that's comfortable for your means. I typically like to ask my families, like 1 out of 10 houses, kind of feel for you. And if they say 7 out of 10, you know what I'm saying? We're definitely going to run with it. That's going to meet most of their needs. So, and with that, I know for a fact, as long as we're kind of checking off the most boxes, and in my book, as long as I can see, help you come back to the table in about a year or two, and we're talking about, some equity, I know my job is done. So, and we're going to start talking about more properties and more opportunities from there.
Right. I'm actually about to list the girl's house that we just bought it 1.5 years ago. So it does happen. She has equity. We're in that type of market. So a lot of people are like, Chanel, okay, you're saying all these great things about a house, but is it possible for me, right? Is it possible that I can go and really purchase a house, right? People think it's so difficult. You can get a house with a 620 score. Really, you can get a house with less than a 620 score if you're working with Jeff, right? No, but you can. I aim for the 600, at least a 600. Just remember what I said before. If you have a little bit higher, a little bit in the lower 600s, just expect that interest rate to be a little higher. But remember, you're going to tax break on the back end. You want to also just know that when you buy a house, people always ask me, do I have to run my credit? Yes, you have to run your credit. When you buy a car, do you have to run your credit? Yes. When you get a credit card, do you have to run your credit? Yes. So the most expensive purchase you probably ever make in your life, yes, you're gonna have to run your credit. One of the things that I really also want to mention is don't be scared to run your credit. One of the great things that I love about working with Jeff and New American Funding is that he offers free credit enhancement for the client. So let's say that your credit score does come back a little shy of 600, comes in at like a 580 or a 585. What New American Funding will do is put your profile up, and then they'll tell you pay down this, and this, and our credit simulator shows that your credit will go to X, Y, and Z.
If you were to pay off.
So, right, if you were supposed to pay off this, stop getting in my head. Yeah. So what you want to do is really just take that leap of faith, because if you try, the worst that can happen is they say not right now. Not no, but not right now. Okay.
It's never a no, it's always a not right now.
Not right now, correct.
Might be next week, next month, next year, but we work with people for over a year.
Right.
And I always say that's one of the best closings ever.
Right.
We have a lady right now that, right?
Yeah, let me tell y'all about her though.
But 2 years, she says, Jeff, what am I gonna do? I've been with you for 2 years.
Yeah.
And she was working with another agent, right? And then what happens is when you get teamed up with agents who really know what they're doing, with them working with me for 2 weeks, we found the house and we closed next week.
Yeah,
okay. So and I just posted about this on Facebook. The average closing is 30 days. Jeff got this we only had an 18-day contract, and then we got cleared to close today, which is actually 5 days before we're actually supposed to close. So I love this. Okay,
Y'all got the right team.
somebody else is trying to get in. Can you admit them? Okay, so another thing that you'll need is money, right? So people always say, Chanel, I want to buy a house, but I only got $300. Well, sweetheart, I can work with $1,000, but I cannot work with $300. So I always tell people, like, when they come to me and they say, like, I don't have the money right now, it doesn't mean that you can't buy. It means that we need to restructure some things in your life. It means that maybe you need to go through everything that you spend and do what I did when I first started saving money, is I spent a week writing down every penny that I spent. And when you do that, you can start eliminating things that you don't really need to spend money on. And that'll help you be able to save the money to put down this 3 to 5% that you're going to need in order to purchase the first home. The other thing that you'll get is closing costs. So yes, there's a down payment, but you'll need closing costs. What closing costs do is they pay for your lender fees, they pay for attorney fees, they pay for just your prepaids, which you probably guys don't even know what that is, but prepaids are like what you have to pay up front. So your mortgage insurance, homeowners insurance, things that get put into your mortgage, you pay those a year in advance. So all of those things go into your closing costs. So when we get to the table, there are things like down payment assistance programs or so forth. But I always tell people, like, save as much as you can, not because I'm trying to make you spend it, just so that you could be in a comfortable position when it's time for you to buy. And then you will need things like bank statements, tax returns, depending on the type of loan you're using, and so forth. Pay stubs. Guys, you can't buy a house without a job, okay? So you need some type of income, whether you're self-employed or employed. We just need to dig into that. So these are the things that you could think about when you're getting ready to purchase a home. But just remember, when you're setting those goals, remember that on the back end, there's always a benefit, okay?
Yeah, and that's a good point. If there are entrepreneurs out here, for sure, you may not get, paid as a W-2 wage earner. There's tons of ways that you can buy real estate, and I think we'll definitely have to do a seminar on this one, because there's so many ways that entrepreneurs can buy real estate now without having to come down to the table with 20-25%. Like, I mean, there's just different things now out there for you guys. If you own a business, for sure. I think one of the other things that I do want to talk about is when Chanel was talking about saving money. This is also a great reason for new construction, right? So I met a guy literally yesterday, and we chat. And here's a good part. Get with your agent and just have the conversation on where you are. Like, that way you can have the gems, you know exactly what you can do for your specific case. So me and my guy, man, we chatted yesterday. He was like, man, my lease doesn't end till September. I was like, okay, cool, let's just chat, let's just see where you are. And he was like, man, I got about, it was under 10 grand that he had saved. And I was like, okay, cool, no problem. We were looking at, just kind of give y'all some numbers. Let's say 300,000, your down payment at a 660 credit score, 3% down. So 3%, 300,000, down payment is 9 grand. All right, closing costs, let's just say even that.
75.
Okay, so we're talking about all in 975, that's about what, 16.5, under 20,000. All right, for us to close on a property at $300,000. So I'm gonna give y'all some real life numbers that you can take away. So I gave him the story of where I helped a young lady. We went under contract in July of 2020. At 250, we paid, I think, maybe $5,000 in earnest money. It took 6 months for us to close on that property, for them to actually build that home. So over the course of 6 months, that builder continues to sell those homes for more money. So by the time we got in January, her home is now worth $300,000, and she hasn't even made a mortgage payment yet. So she's already pocketed 50 grand, right? We've only put $5,000 towards the table. So her story was very similar to his. It was, Wes, I have minimum funds, but I kind of want to start getting into real estate. Where do I start? And we came across this new construction opportunity, and Jeff was actually one of our partners on this deal. And with that, she was able to save the remaining funds over the course of the next 6 months that she would actually need to close. Now, the great point about new construction too is that sometimes, those builders, lenders, they'll give you closing cost incentives. So that now starts to reduce those numbers that you would actually have to close. So that's another great point, even when it comes to your cash to close and just having different partners and relationships in place, because it'll give you that time where you can save that same money by just simply starting early and having the conversations. So I just talked about the first one. Yeah. So again, I think the biggest thing is just have the conversation early. We can really kind of talk about the numbers for your specific case. Another one that I get all the time is, well, hey Wes, yeah, me and my lady, we both going on the loan. And this is going to be something that we're going to get ready to tap into as we get ready to talk about the second house. Is that me personally, and I'm sure Chanel can attest to this too, is that when you're leveraging your own credit, your own income, it now allows your family to do more, so you all can grow your overall portfolios. So for instance, if we're talking about Chanel, me and Chanel are together, and she's owned a home, she's talking about buying her second property, and whether we're dating or we're getting engaged, we're married. You're right. Probably our portfolios might be a little bit different, but let's just say we're even married, right? And she goes out and she's bought primary residence. Now I can even let my income and my credit to go do the exact same thing. So now we can talk about having our under
chicken strip.
We can have 2 properties, 3 properties, 4 properties. I mean, the numbers can really get up there from just leveraging your own individual credit versus tying everybody's credit into one house.
So
Y'all got Tutti? Can I get like a mixture? Lemonade? Yeah.
Oh, did somebody just say something? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, I can hear it. Someone's talking and is breaking into your conversation.
Oh, let's go mute everybody. How do I do that?
I think on the 3 dots more. Oh, wait, it'll go mute off to the left.
Did that work? Did it stop everybody from?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Right, okay. Okay, so what I was trying to tell you guys how did that just happen to the slide? I don't even know how to fix that at this point. There we go. Okay, so from a married perspective, right? I'm married, and the house that my husband and I have, I'm not on it. So the reason that we set it up like that is because the rule in Georgia is that you cannot buy as a first-time home buyer. You can't own for like 3 years, correct? 3 years.
Yeah, so
right?
said differently, if you haven't owned a home or had ownership interest in a home, meaning being on title, for past 3 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer.
Correct. So I'm personally not on the deed, or my name is not on the mortgage at our new home, because eventually in the next 3 years, I just sold, so I have to wait 3 years. I'm going to purchase another home, but I'm going to be able to use a loan with a lower down payment interest, because I will purchase that home as a first-time home buyer because I do not have ownership interest in a home. Does that make sense? So as people think you get married, both of you have to go on a loan. That's not true.
Right.
You don't have to do that. So we bought that home. Now I can go buy another home as a first-time home buyer, right? And then after that, then we can take what we're making off of those homes, whether one is an investment property, whatever, after I've technically lived in it for whatever, just in the room, right? So after I've lived in it, quote unquote, right, I can rent it out, start making money off of that property. Now I can take the money that I make from that property and go buy a whole nother property, right? And here we are, that's how you leverage spouses, in, you know, their credit, their income, everything. Another reason that I tell spouses, and Jeff might hate me for it, right? But I really try to keep my husband and wives off of the loan together is because COVID is a perfect example, right? People lost their jobs. People couldn't pay bills.
Right.
You can go bankrupt, right? And if me and Wes are married and we're both on the loan, guess what? Both of us now have bankruptcy on our credit. We have no choice but to rent.
Right.
We're stuck, right? But if I didn't have ownership interest in the house that Wes and me lived in, then guess what? We might not be paying bills, but I don't have a bankruptcy on my credit, right? So once we are able to come up with the money, I can go buy another house for our family, which is why I really advocate for husband and wife to stay stay separate on the loan if financially.
It makes sense.
It makes sense for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
And you guys on the chat, if you have questions, we are gonna have a Q&A, but if there's something you think you're gonna forget, you can write it in the chat.
And then I think there's also some people that live out of state. So they I had a couple people reach out to me as well that don't live here in Georgia. So I know Jeff and I worked together on a couple of these opportunities where, hey, I've been living in New York or Florida or whatever the case may be, or my job may be remote, but I want to, buy real estate in Georgia. And, we can actually, we'll have to kind of get some type of letters from HR and things of that nature to, of course, make sure everything's checked off. But you can actually make Georgia your primary residence, which can be huge because now you don't have to treat a property in Georgia like it's an investment. So that could, again, just number wise, I think the biggest thing for this seminar is how to buy real estate with the least amount of funds. So if there's any way that I can do that, whether it be spouse related or, living in a different state or whatever the case may be, there's ways where we can buy real estate without having to come to the table with, 10, 20% down. And I think that right there is the gem to, let's connect more. So, man, I gotta introduce my man. This was by far one of the most interesting, most fun experiences because when I met Destin, well, I've already known Destin for a long time, but when me and Destin, when we connected about real estate on his first purchase, it was one of those things where it's just like, people kind of share with your goals. And then I was like, okay, let's do it, but to actually see it come into fruition and the whole play kind of from start to finish on how it was done, I was like, no, man, everybody has to know how to kind of get into a position where we can leverage that first property and buy multiple properties. And then we've already even talked about it, and I'll kind of let Jeff even maybe talk about this on how we can even go buy another primary residence later down the road, when we start to, let's just say, have a family and whatever the case may be. So I'm gonna get my guy Destin to come up here and just kind of chat a little bit about his experience. Just went from start to finish on how you kind of got into, we kind of talked about buying the first property. So really kind of your experience buying that second property, more so what was needed, how did you kind of leverage that first property, and let's kind of chat that through for those people that really kind of came out like, hey, I already own real estate, West. I've already bought my first home. What can I kind of do to maybe come into my second property with the least amount of funds as possible?
Okay, so again, my name is Destin Pace. Took a little note, so I won't be rambling. So bought my second crib August of this year. My first crib I bought December of 2019. So a little under 2 years. So things that were needed to make sure I secured my second crib. The biggest thing was the lease agreements to show the income in my account as well as the bank statements. So like Chanel mentioned, you're gonna have to have bank statements. They're gonna have to see your income. And They only needed two months of bank statements. When the initial bank statements, when you apply for the pre-approval, and then the second set of bank statements when you're actually gonna close, so they know what's in your account. They need to see the funds for the down payment and the normal things like credit check, as well as I'm trying to think. That should be almost it.
That's about it.
Yeah, that should be almost it. So the one thing that I didn't like about my second crib that my first crib was, it was 5%. So 5% down. The first time I used my conventional loan, I was 3% down. So this one was 5, just a little bit more, but it was still cheaper than a 10% or 20% that you have to put down on investment properties. So this second home was my primary residence now. My original home is now converted into an investment property. Things that I had to come into like think about that I didn't initially think about was when I switched it over, my insurance, I use the same insurance company. So they now are changing my insurance for the second home because it is now an investment property.
Taxes a little bit, you gotta do your homestead switches.
Yes, homestead switches, which I don't
You gotta pick one or the other. You don't have to change it.
Right,
You gotta pick one, though.
so that is something that I actually wrote down, my homestead. So my first home, I was lazy. Well, I had a lot going on. That's not an excuse, but I didn't do my homestead at the first year I bought my first home.
Oh my God.
I own a home downtown Atlanta near the Beltline where they're building up. So right there near Mercedes-Benz. So if you know that area, you know the property value is rising. After not doing my homestead the first year, my property tax went up $6,000 for the next year.
Yes.
So that in itself raised my mortgage on about $500 a month. And that pissed me off. So, but before I went and bought my second home, I refinanced that home. So it dropped my mortgage $500 a month because my interest rate when I first bought my first home was 3.8, and then now it went down to, I want to say 3% flat, which dropped my monthly mortgage to about $500 a month. So that increase dropped it. And just think about it. If you did the Homestead Act and then refinance, I would probably pay $1,000 right now. But you know, you live and learn. So
for property in Atlanta, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think you touched on a lot.
The investment one.
Yeah, I was trying to say, yeah.
When you look at it, you say, if you're breaking even, we're cash flowing it.
Right.
Say, you know, so I always tell people with investment properties, you're either buying it to get in and out of, right? And I'm just gonna turn and burn it, I'm gonna upgrade it, and then I'm gonna make my 20 grand and we'll move on.
Right.
Or you're gonna buy
Hold
a
it.
whole,
Right.
and as long as you can cover the note with the rent,
And you can get the
what do
money.
you care?
Right.
The more you make, the better. You're still gonna get the interest deduction.
Mhm.
And then 5 years from now, you look up and you say, hey, now
I
I
made some
made
money.
60 grand in equity, in your
Right.
case, probably 100.
Right. So in 2 years, I've made almost $50,000 in equity. I think it should be higher, but you know, I'm not an
Until you
appraiser.
sell it, it doesn't matter.
So, right, he's right about that. So, but one thing that I'm looking to do, I guess going forward, is trying to leverage that equity to more homes. So if that is with a HELOC or that is with a refinance, I take that money and put it to another down payment, hopefully next year. So we have 3 cribs in 3 years.
Come on,
So-
let's keep it going.
Right.
We're not stopping.
So,
Yay.
so
You didn't write the thing, three cribs and two-
Yeah, I got it.
Right. So, I think that was really important to hear from you too. One, we told y'all we really want to help young people because we all young, right? So I think it's really impressive, everything that you're doing, and I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a question.
So, go
I
ahead.
do have a question for you. So just so we're not missing over just kind of that process. So with your first property, just kind of walk us through like how were you or you have tenants in there or?
Oh, yes, I have. So I guess what they call it house hacking. So I had 2 of my homeboys move with me. I got lease agreements for them. And then that was how I was able to show the money to the bank. So I have lease agreements, I have the account, the money coming to my account. And when you can physically show that, then they'll approve you for the next loan.
Okay, so for instance, and for a very simplistic statement, if my mortgage was $1,000 and I have my roommates or tenant or girlfriend or whoever,
Not a family member.
Not a family member.
Let's be very clear. So $1,000, so my mortgage is $1,000 and I'm getting $1,000 in rent. I'm not making any money, but my debt is now zeroed out. What I can now go do. Well, yeah, okay, you're right. So we have to be actually 1250. So it has to be 75%. So let's say it's 1250, right? Now what that does is I can my debt is now basically zeroed out in the lending world.
Right.
And now that I can take literally my same income with my same job, and now I can go buy more real estate with simply having a lease agreement in place.
I think the biggest key to that is understanding your DTI. Your DTI, your debt to income ratio, is separate from your debt to credit ratio. So your DTI is what allows you to get approved for how much you're gonna get approved for.
Right.
So if you have a good amount, like you have low debt, high income, they're gonna give you $600,000. If you have, high debt and, a moderate income, that's when you get your limitations on your approval. So that the lease agreements help, the lease agreements in the cash, and that's what I say 75% helps that DTI for the investment.
And another thing is that you could technically be charging $2,000. You can make the difference on that profit every month if you wanted to, and then that gets into taxes and all this good stuff, and the lender's going to want to see that. So again, get with your agent so that we can kind of talk about what's going to be best. Everything in real estate is a very case-by-case scenario. So you share a good story, but of course we want to sit with you specifically.
I'm glad for him. I want to touch on a couple of things that Destin said is, okay, so a lot of you guys get into a situation and you're like, I don't have nobody living with me, right? And how do I do that if I don't have anybody living with me and I don't have a lease agreement? So having a lease agreement, having a bank statement, that's all good and dandy, and it's the best and cleanest way to go. However, Jeff can tell you, it can still be done whether you have current lease people in your home right now. You can also get a lease, you can also get an appraisal of the property's value. And from the property's value, Jeff or whatever lender you're working with, but Jeff, right? Jeff will take it and he'll run the numbers on the rent rolls.
They do a rent schedule on that appraisal.
On the rent rolls in the area. And if that number gets you to the same number that would cancel out your debt, you can also cancel it out that way. And then once you close, we need to make sure you get a renter. Okay. So like for you guys who are like, dang, I got people living with me and I want to buy another house and I haven't been able to do that. There are still ways around it, even if you do not have that in place. But like, that's the name of the game. We want everybody to do what Destin is doing. Buy a house, put people in it, get another house. And preferably, if you can wait 3 years, you can buy it without having to put a higher interest rate, higher down payment down, because then you can purchase it again as a first-time home buyer in a primary residence. So you can do all of this, and the name of the game is buy as much real estate as possible, get as many people in it, because eventually, if all else fails, you're still going to have the equity in the home.
And that's a great thing because he's in Atlanta, so we have so many different opportunities. So literally, when he gets ready to find this family house, whenever that may be, we'll be able to literally treat that like our primary residence, but I may have, I don't know, however many properties in Atlanta and they may be rented out. So I can still go buy that final family house and still come down to the table with 5% down through whatever, kind of the case. So this can literally kind of start to grow, your portfolio. And again, just imagine if you're doing this and your spouse is doing this, y'all might be retired before 40. If you,
I am going to be retired before
you stay close enough, all right?
But I am.
So, I think we
We already talked about this.
Talked about all that good stuff. So, I guess if we have any questions.
No, it's Jeff's turn.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Covered everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jeff, can you just tell everybody the types of loans that they can use? And you can come up here because people on Zoom can see you. They do want to see you. You are like the amazing Jeff. This is the amazing Jeff.
All right, so what are the questions? So mortgages. So do I just give them
Yeah, just
The
an
speech,
overview of the
like you
different
call-
mortgages.
So if you call me on the phone and you said, hey, Jeff, I don't know anything about mortgages, can you just start telling me about mortgages? And I say, sure. So they come in a couple different flavors. They come in what we call the government side, and they come in what we call the conventional lending side. So break those down, government side are FHA, VA, and USDA. And I say, if you're not a veteran, you don't qualify for VA, you get rid of that. Then there's USDA and FHA. If you want to live in the urban area or suburban area and you don't want to be rural, then you get rid of USDA. Now, if you want to live rural, or then you can go USDA, which leaves you with FHA and conventional. And then the difference, the first fork in the road for conventional versus an FHA mortgage is generally I start with, if you have a 680 credit score, and you laid an FHA mortgage down by a conventional mortgage, you would say, hey, they look very similar with regards to payment, right? If you have a 679 and below, you start to lend yourself more to an FHA mortgage. 680 and higher, you start to see the differences that it's a little bit better for you financially, payment-wise, to go with a conventional mortgage. Then we start talking about first-time home buyer. We talk to a lot of people, hey, Jeff, first-time home buyer, what kind of incentive programs are out there? Well, 9 out of the 10 down payment assistance / first-time home buyer programs are FHA mortgages fundamentally. So, we will work with somebody with a 780 credit score and say, yeah, Jeff, but I don't really have a lot of money to put down. And now we're not talking about investment here. We're talking about primary residences. Hey, I don't have a lot of money to put down, but I'm a first-time home buyer, got really great credit. What can you do for me? Well, there's one program down in the city of Atlantic that's available that can use any type of mortgage. All the other first-time home buyer programs that I'm familiar with are FHA mortgages. So you say 780 credit score, first-time home buyer, I'm going to go first-time home buyer FHA, and you take the program. Now, again, there's a couple of them out there. A lot of people are familiar with Georgia Dream. Not a bad program. It used to be a little more exciting when they had their hardest hit fund that ran out of money in October. We don't use Georgia Dream very much unless it's a 125K or less purchase, just because of some of the fees and stuff like that. We switch them into, we have a FHA 0% down program. And I tell people it's exactly what I just said. It was 0% down payment. You still have what Chanel talked about a little earlier. There's closing costs. So what we'll call total funds to close. You got closing costs, you got prepaid, you put those things together, you say, hey, this is it. Round numbers, like Wes knows we like to use. $200,000 purchase, FHA says minimum down payment, 3.5%, $7 grand. 0% down says, I got your $7 grand. Closing costs on this program for $200,000 is probably about $7 grand, $7,500. We have to talk about who's going to take care of the $7,500. So a seller can pay on an FHA mortgage up to 6% of the purchase price. So in this scenario, $200,000, that obviously covers $7,500. So they can pay none of the closing costs, some of the closing costs, all the closing costs. So for 0% down, you could theoretically get into it for about no money. Now, back to what Chanel said before. My feeling is if you're going to buy a home, you're going to need minimum $2,000 on a 0% down program. You're going to have earnest money, probably about $1,000. You're going to have an appraisal. Those just went up a little bit because of the appraiser person crunch that we're in right now. So now it's $590 for an FHA appraisal, and then you're going to want a home inspection. So we add those things together and say, oh, that's $2,000, right? So think, hey, even though 0% down, I'm going to still need $2,000 to $2,500 to be a first-time home buyer. Right.
Let me ask you this. So outside of like FHA conventional, for instance, let's just say if I got a bakery or I'm a producer or whatever case may be, like what and I want to buy a home, like, I'm paying $2,500 to stay in a Madera downtown. So what's going on? What would you kind of suggest for those that You know, may not actually be a W-2 wage earner, but still have, you know, income.
No, great question. And it's fine being a self-employed bar. We deal with a lot of them. The first thing is be self-employed for 2 years, right? So, or at least have an LLC in place for 2 years. So, if you're self-employed 2 years and, hey, Jeff, I have a really great accountant and he takes all of my money and he makes it look like I don't make any money. Then you say, okay, that's fine. It really works nice if you're an LLC, you have a separate banking account for your business. So it's, you know, Wesley Guy, the person, and Wesley Guy, the realtor,
Right.
LLC.
Right.
Wesley Guy's realtor income dumps into his bank account. We can do what they call a 12-month bank statement.
Right, yeah.
So you have a 12-month bank statement program. The down payment, again, now you're leaving the first-time home buyer 3% down, second-time home buyer 5% down. Now you're getting into the 10 to 20% down payment programs. But if you have the cash and you can show your bank statements with the income, then you don't need the bank statements. There's also, I mean, if you have a boatload of money, we don't use it as often as some of the other programs, but there's also asset depletion. So, I mean, if you're sitting on a few $1 million and you don't want to show anything except for, hey, here's my $3 million, just asset depleted, you can asset deplete to grab the income. You can have different types of investments where annuities and stuff, where you're drawing on the annuities for a couple of years. And you can show that the annuity income is
Y'all,
coming
we
out.
all are going to be at the asset depletion level.
Right.
in the
Oh,
next
yeah.
5 years.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm trying to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
you're good to go, right? So there's, you know, kind of to your point, I think, you know, Wes, you said a little bit earlier, every deal, as you and I know, every deal is a little bit different. And, you know, we're blessed enough on my team to do a fair amount of business. And it's just amazing.
A fair amount.
It's
That's
just-
very
it's
much.
So
just-
humble.
It's just amazing, it's just amazing that of that fair amount, they really are, like, everyone else is different,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And they all have little twists and turns. So it's, you know, again, just
Fair
saying what I
amount.
said earlier, it just gets started. Don't be afraid to kind of step across the line, peel back the onion, open, whatever you want to call it. Just say, man, I'm ready to show you what I got,
Yeah.
show it all. I love when you said.
Show
hey, man,
it all.
we, you know, what
Be
we just
vulnerable.
started chatting.
Oh.
You're like, we just started chatting and he said this. I'm like, man, just tell me everything.
Yeah, the lender's gotta be your best friend. You gotta share with them everything.
Yeah.
Because you don't wanna have, you start working all the way down to close and then they say, yeah, we got a little hiccup. And then
Yeah.
I'm getting phone
Yeah.
calls at 6:30 in the morning by
and
Jeff.
please
That's not good.
don't Go like changing your stuff
Yeah.
when you start working with the realtor or making decisions without talking
Yeah.
to the realtor.
No need to go buy a
Great
car,
point.
save the Rolls Royce for after closing.
Hey, I've made this statement, listen, I know you want to drive up in this new buggy, but I don't care if it's when you leave the attorney's office and you bought your house and you got to make a pit stop at the Ferrari dealership so you can drive in.
Right.
I said, just wait till after.
Wait till-
Right.
You know, so we see everything. We have a bunch of different reports. We do a lot of things. We have underwriters that have been in the game for 20, 25 years. We've probably, even though they're all a little different, we've probably seen or, you know, been exposed to everything out there. So it's better just to kind of get it out on the table. Let's work through it up front. That way the rest of it is pretty smooth.
Let
You
me,
can do those 13-day clear closes.
let me ask you one question. How soon, for any buyer that's looking to buy their first property, their second property, whatever, how soon would you say they need to probably just start the conversation?
Yeah, well, kind of my rule of thumb is if most people have an idea what their credit's like, if you kind of have an idea, hey, you know what, it's not so good, Jeff, 6 months. If you know, hey, I've got an 800 credit score and I've got, you know, 100K in the bank.
60
you know,
days.
You can go, yeah, call me 60 days out, let's go. Yeah, but you know, again, what we'll share with you is we've moved from agents looking for clients to be pre-qualified, meaning you've done an application, I believed everything you put on the application, and I say you're pre-qualified to, now everybody's getting pre-approved, meaning, hey, I'm collecting income, asset, and credit information, I'm taking that and running through my underwriters, we're coming out with pre-approvals now, making your offers a lot stronger
And just
than pre-qualified.
FYI, I encourage all of my clients to get pre-approved before I show them homes.
One house.
Yep.
And the reason that I do that not pre-qualified, I'm talking about pre-approved. Because when I do that, when I put in offers, I'm putting in offers to what, Jeff? To win.
To win, yeah.
To win, right?
Both of them, I mean, at the end of the day, what it does, it allows your agent to reduce the contingency timeframes. It
Right.
allows them to reduce the closing timeframe. So
Correct.
everything can be consolidated because in essence,
Everything's done.
everything's done.
All I need
Correct.
is just literally title.
Which
Yeah.
is how we just got that deal
Yeah.
where we got a clear to close in 13
Yeah.
days.
Absolutely. And Destin, let me ask this, when we were shopping even our second time, we went to go see what?
5 to 7 homes.
And I mean, we could have honestly probably went under contract on all of them. That's how like literally just the power of having everything done.
Yeah, we actually on contract under one that we initially wanted and then canceled it.
Yeah, like just like that. I mean, literally just because everything's done. So when I say get with my man, like talk early to start the process early, it all makes sense because now in a quote unquote aggressive market, it's going to make your offer just stand out, whether again, you're buying your first, second investment properties, whatever, just having everything done. So I think that makes sense.
So you guys online, I am getting ready to unmute you guys. You can either chat your questions or you can say your questions, but we're gonna open up for question and answer for anybody who has questions. I don't know. Does anybody have questions? Do y'all have questions? Y'all good? Y'all got a question? I know you asked me.
I asked you a question. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
I didn't realize that. You know Courtney?
Oh, yeah.
She told me about you, and this is funny. I didn't even realize this was your.
Oh.
She's like, oh my God, you went. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm
Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right, man, small
I do
world.
have a question.
I took a picture.
Every time.
I took a picture. It's funny, I took a picture of you. I think.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
Yeah, I can hear you.
What's that been?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so, good night, by the way, to everybody. I would like to
What's
know
going on?
at what credit score should we actually be at to say purchase a, let's say between $400,000 to $550,000 house, and what would the down payment be like? Also to later on, looking forward to going to the second house purchasing.
So on your first question for a primary residence,
Right.
you're going with an FHA mortgage, meaning more than likely if you're 679 or below, we'll make the assumption. Now you could potentially get qualified on a conventional mortgage. I mean, the guideline says a 620 credit score, you're probably not going to get approved like that. So just on the premise that you're going to go with an FHA mortgage, the maximum financeable amount for FHA loan limits as it stands right now, they may increase them by the end of the year or by going into 2022. But right now you can't finance more than $412,400. So I worked on a client a little bit earlier in that exact scenario with so figure to buy that house, FHA finance 412, meaning you can purchase, I think it was 425,000. Then you take the 3.5% down payment, it left 412, right? Actually a little bit less than that. You could do that comfortably with a 660 to 680 credit score, depending on what your credit profile looked like. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Now, if you start getting into the 500s where you say, well, now I just blew through the FHA loan limits, we just increased our conventional mortgage finance amounts up to $625,000. If you're going to get into that deal and you want to go 3% down on the primary residence, you're probably thinking I need to have, just call it a 700 credit score. Again, you're going to a conventional mortgage. You'd say, hey, you know what, maybe depending if I had a huge 401k with, let's say I had $60,000 in a 401k and a 680 credit score, and I was gonna put 5% down on the primary, so, $400,000, 20 grand, there's a chance you could get, chance that would work out for you. Follow?
Okay.
I threw a lot at you. Does any question off of that? I always tell my clients, the later it gets in the day, the quicker I talk, and I just start slinging numbers all over the place. I always tell them, just, hey, Glick, you talk too fast, but I hope that helped.
So to
Yes, it
simplify,
definitely
if you're
did.
going FHA, you could take whatever the price, as long as it's not over 412 times 3.5%,
Yeah.
that would be your down payment plus whatever the closing cost is.
And probably have a 6
Okay.
credit score.
If you're going conventional, up to 625,000. If you want to put 3% down, you need to have a 720
Call it 720, probably at 3% down.
720 credit score or more, but you can take whatever number house that is times 3%. That'll be how much your down payment is plus the closing costs. Does that make sense? Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, if y'all don't have any questions, I'm going to end the Zoom.
Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you all for showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. And we'll have to do something.
We'll do another one.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah, you guys had a great turnout.
Absolutely. I mean, the room is packed.